research, researchers, and readers. Prologue. Starting a research project. If you are beginning your first research project, the task may seem overwhelming. How do I find a topic? Where do I find information on it? What do I do with it when I find it? Even if you have written a research paper in a writing class, the idea of another may be even more intimidating if this time it's supposed to be the real thing. Even experienced researchers feel anxious when they tackle a new project, especially when it's of a new kind. So whatever anxiety you may feel, most researchers have felt the same. It's a feeling that we three know well. The difference is that experienced researchers know what lies ahead, hard work, but also the pleasure of the hunt, some frustration, but more satisfaction, periods of confusion, but confidence that, in the end, it will all come together. Making plans. Experienced researchers also know that research most often comes together when they have a plan, no matter how rough. Before they start, they may not know exactly what they are looking for, but they know in general what they will need, how to find it, and what it should look like when they do. And once they assemble their materials, they don't just start writing any more than competent builders just start sawing. They make a plan, maybe no more than a sketch of an outline, not even on paper. But shrewd researchers don't let their plan box them in. They change it if they run into a problem or discover in some byway something more interesting that leads in a new direction. But they do start with a plan. A newspaper reporter, for example, follows a plan when she writes her story as an inverted pyramid, putting the salient information first. But she doesn't do that just for her own benefit, to make her job of drafting easier, but so that readers can find the gist of the news quickly, then decide whether to read on. An accountant knows how to plan an audit report, but that plan also lets investors quickly find the information they need to decide whether the company is an Intel or another Enron. Within these forms, of course, writers are free to take different points of view, emphasize different ideas, and put a personal stamp on their work. But they also know that when they follow a standard plan, they make it easier for them selves to write and their readers to read efficiently and productively. The aim of this book is to help you create, execute, and if necessary revise a plan that lets you not only do your own best, most original thinking, but draft a report that meets your readers' needs and their highest expectations. The value of research. But first, a candid question: why do research at all? Aside from a grade, what's in it for you? For those new to research, there are immediate and practical benefits. Learning to do research will help you understand the material you cover as no other kind of work can match. You can evaluate what you read most thoughtfully only when you have experienced the uncertain and often messy process of doing your own research. Writing a report of your own will help you understand the kind of work that lies behind what you find in your textbooks and what experts tell the public. It lets you experience firsthand how new knowledge depends on which questions are asked and which aren't, how the standard forms for presenting research shape the kinds of questions you ask and answers you offer. More distantly, the skills you learn now will be crucial when you do advanced work in whatever field you choose to study. Even more distantly, the skills of research will pay off long after you leave school, especially in a time aptly named the age of information or, too often, of misinformation. Sound research reported clearly has immense value now that the internet and cable flood us with more information than we can absorb, much less evaluate, especially when so much of it is based on research that we rely on at our peril. And though some might think it idealistic, a final reason for doing research is the pleasure it offers in solving a puzzle, the satisfaction of discovering something that no one else knows and that contributes to the wealth of human knowledge and understanding. Research, though, is not the sort of thing you learn once and for all. Each of the three of us has faced research projects that forced us to take a fresh look at how we do our work. Whenever we've addressed our research to a new research community, we've had to learn its principles to help us focus on what is important to its members. But even then, we could still rely on some common principles that all research communities follow, principles that we describe in this book. We think these principles will be useful not only now but through the years as your circumstances change and your research assignments and your readers become increasingly demanding. But we must be candid, doing research carefully and reporting it clearly are hard work. They consist of many tasks, often compete for your attention at the same time. However carefully you plan, research follows a crooked path, taking unexpected turns, even looping back on itself. As complex as that process is, though, we will work through it step by step. When you can manage the parts, you can manage the whole, and then look forward to more research with greater confidence. Floods of misinformation since the 9/11 attack on the World Trade Center, the US government has been challenged not only to root out terrorism but to counter bizarre claims that have circulated in the Middle East, especially on the internet. No Muslims were among the hijackers. Jews had advance notice and stayed home. The attacks were the work of the CIA. These claims have been widely believed to be true, even though no evidence backs them up. Before we feel superior, however, we should recall some bizarre stories believed by many Americans. The CIA started the AIDS epidemic to kill homosexuals and African Americans. The government still hides the bodies of aliens in Area 51. Barcodes are a UN conspiracy to take over the world. Every society succumbs to outlandish beliefs, but we all can learn to see through them and to make a case for what we believe is true. It won't convince everyone, but it might convince some, including ourselves. How to use this book? The best way to deal with the complexity of research and its anxiety is to read this book twice. First, skim it to see what lies before you. Skip ahead when you feel confused or bored. Then, as you begin your work, read carefully the chapters relevant to the task at hand. If you are wholly new to research, start rereading from the beginning. If you are in an intermediate course but not yet at home in your field, skim part 1, then concentrate on the rest. If you consider yourself an experienced researcher, you will probably find chapter 4 and parts 3 and 4 most useful. In part 1, we address what those of you undertaking your first project have to think about consciously, why readers expect you to write up your research in particular ways, chapter 1, and why you should think of your project not as solitary work but as a conversation with those whose work you read and then with those who will read yours, chapter 2. In part 2, we discuss how to frame and develop your project. We explain how to carve out a topic from an interest, then how to focus and question it. Chapter 3, how to transform those questions into a research problem. Chapter 4, how to find sources to guide the search for answers. Chapter 5, how to use those sources and think through what you find. Chapter 6. In Part 3, we discuss how to assemble a sound case in support of your claim. That includes an overview of the elements of a research argument. Chapter 7, what counts as a significant claim. Chapter 8, what count as good reasons and sound evidence. Chapter 9, why and how you must acknowledge questions, objections, and alternatives and respond to them. Chapter 10, how you justify the logic of your argument. Chapter 11. In Part 4, we lay out the steps in producing your report, how to plan and write a first draft. Chapter 12, how to test and revise it. Chapter 13, how to write an introduction and conclusion that convince readers that your report is worth their time. Chapter 14, how to present complex quantitative evidence clearly and pointedly. Chapter 15, how to edit your style to make it clear, direct, and readable. Chapter 16. In an afterword, the ethics of research, we reflect on a matter that goes beyond professional competence. Doing and reporting research is a social activity with an ethical dimension. We all know of recent scandals about the dishonest research of historians, scientists, stock analysts, and others, and we see plagiarism spreading among writers at all levels of achievement, from secondary school students to those at the top of their prof's science. Such events emphasize the importance of hard thinking about what constitutes ethical research and its reporting. Between some of the chapters you will find quick tips, brief sections that complement the chapters. Some quick tips are checklists. Some discuss additional considerations for advanced students. Several address matters not raised in the chapters, but all add something new. At the end of this book, there is a brief survey of recent work in the issues we address in this book, an essay aimed at those who teach research, and a bibliography of sources for beginning researchers and for those getting into particular fields. Research is hard work, but like any challenging job done well, both the process and the results can bring real personal satisfaction. No small part of that satisfaction comes from knowing that your work supports and sustains the fabric of your community. That sense of contributing to a community is never more rewarding than when you discover something that you believe can improve your readers' lives by changing what and how they think.